just waiting for Darren to join us. So hopefully we're going to have a few questions tonight. Let's see how it goes. Just waiting for Darren to join us over from United States in Colorado. And he's in. Look at that. It was It was almost like it was planned.
Nice. Yeah, I got the old phone this time, so no technical problems today for me.
It looks good. You look. The image looks really clear. It's good.
Thanks.
That's
got
right.
some good lighting too. Actually, got some new lighting in the garage above me, so that really helps a lot.
Yeah, it's looking a bit more like a studio there. You're outdoing me now because it's just crap behind me. So
that's what that wall looks like over there.
Fair enough.
Hey, Troy. Season chat.
Hi, Troy.
Going mug.
Hi, look.
Cheers.
Cheers. Mine's just got cola in it though, so.
Oh, I've still got the rest of the day, so I got some regular tea here.
Yeah. Peter Allison, hi guys, how's things? Everything's just fine.
The green car behind me here has proven to be quite useful for filming my new video series.
Excellent.
Got a lot of interesting problems wrong with it, so those will be coming out fairly soon.
Excellent. I was just thinking, actually, it's that time of year now where people are going to be putting their cars away. So it's fuel stabilizer time. So if you got your Stabil, now's the time. Put it in. Remember to put it in and then fill up with fresh fuel. All right. Get that done and you'll be set for the winter. Just drive it around afterwards for 20 minutes or so to get the fuel up to the carb, and you'll be set for the winter.
Yeah, and it also applies to the injection cars as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hi, Ian.
So I was having a thought the other day about, you and I have a lot of interesting projects. What's an interesting piece you've had to make for someone for a Mini?
For me?
Yeah.
Interesting piece. I made some stainless steel, what were they? High-low rods for the rear for somebody's car. Yeah, they were nice.
I don't think I've ever seen them in stainless.
Nice bit of turning on the lathe. I think 316. I think they were 304. No, 304. They might have been. I made them out of, but they were well over engineered. And then the thing that I've got to make this week is some step dowels, because I've got a flywheel here from Thomas Classic and Modern, and it's been ruined by somebody else. So I'm de-ruining it. So I've got to make some dowels to go from one size to another. You don't want to go there. Okay. Hi, guys. Yeah. Nice.
Hi,
Colin. Yeah. Hi. Peter Allison, what would you guys say would be a good investment Mini at the moment? Well, that's a good question. I wouldn't actually know the answer because I'm not a person that buys and sells Minis and knows what the market's like. So I am most definitely not that person to answer that question.
The nicest one you can get.
Yeah. Basically, if you're talking about money, it's any Mini that needs the least work possible, because any work on it is going to cost you an absolute fortune. So therefore, if you're going to spend an absolute fortune, you need to be keeping it for the rest of your life to get the value out of it. But if you're just trying to buy it to pass it on, then it's got to be it's usually minimal profits, really, which is buy a good one, then sell it on with a little profit.
So the green car behind me, I've got almost 30 hours of labor into it. And this was a perfectly normal running driving car when it came in. It's had plenty of little issues that have gobbled up a considerable amount of time to do and fix. So that's why I said get the nicest one you can afford.
So that's getting on for a week's worth of labour. You know, and you know, in the US, the labour rates aren't cheap. You know, so these cars are not they're not cheap to be having other people working on.
That's what I do to my garage.
Yeah. Well, at least you can. You know, the rates are a little bit lower than having to pay for a whole unit. So yeah, you know, that's called being sensible, and that's exactly what I do.
See, hi Andy.
Yeah.
Caitlin. I'm supposed to be picking up a Elf Project car this Saturday to bring in, so that'll be some footage for the next few weeks.
Yeah. Just to answer Colin Duff there, we used to have a 1310 Tahiti, which is now owned by the stepson. What's your opinion of the coil spring conversion that replaces the rubber donuts? I've only ever seen broken ones. So I've never driven one, but I have seen a lot of broken ones, and I couldn't say which make or whatever. So again, I'm not a suspension person, but I just go on what I've seen at ML Motorsport and places like that, where we've seen a lot of broken ones. So I don't know what they're like more recently. Perhaps you need to ask somebody who's not selling them for their opinion, because if you ask somebody that's selling them, of course they're going to tell you that they're absolutely perfect, which in reality no product's perfect. So you need to try and get an opinion based on somebody who's had experience of them.
I find it hard to get shocks to match them appropriately. Usually they're either too hard or they're too soft, and the coils end up bottoming out. But on the red car behind me, I did the smooth ride cones, and I love them.
Yeah,
I'll probably do those again on my other injection car. Just because they're really they're really just a around town, comfort thing. So if you're racing, you'll find some other product to use. But yeah, I've only ever seen broken coils as well. But like I said, the difficulty is getting the shocks right.
Tony Harmer. All right, Tony, is the Stabil fuel stuff good from now till March? Of course it is. If you're using Stabil storage, it's got 2 years on it.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely fine. If you've treated, as long as you've treated fresh fuel, Tony, you're not going to have a problem.
Yeah, they make it in a storage flavor, and then at everyday use. But even this, the 360 says it's good for up to 12 months.
Yeah.
Where the storage says 2 years.
Yeah.
So, yeah, both of these would get you through March.
That's the important thing, Tony, is you get it in now so you're protected for the winter, so it doesn't matter if you leave the car now, as long as it's in there. Catalin, so you're saying that when you push the clutch down, the engine slows down. Is this a recently rebuilt engine? Keith of the Shire, I'm gonna let you answer this one. I had a few people recently ask me about wax jets, and what's the point, right? Because I know you like them, and I like them as well for a reason. So
I don't know how you would test one. I'm not sure how you would physically measure it, because it does move a small amount. However, anything that adjusts your fuel based on the temperature that it's seeing, so either the temperature of the fuel on the float bowl or at the carb itself, like in the HIF, it's integrated into the bottom of the carb. Either one is great. I'll give you a little story. In the heat of summer, I drove that car about 600 miles, and it was about 95, 100 degrees Fahrenheit during the day. And in the middle of the day, that car would run 0.85, 0.9 lambda. I have a built-in air fuel gauge in my car. But then at night, it would run lambda 1. So I was seeing like a 15 to 20% fluctuation in idle mixture just from the change in temperature in the day. And that is a fixed jet car. So if I had a wax stat, it would compensate for that change in temperature and run a much more stable idle mixture. I found myself all day long for that trip just changing my mixture slightly depending on what time of day it was. So I absolutely would recommend the wax stat or the later HIF with the bimetallic strip. It's a great way of controlling your fuel mixture.
So I never advocate changing to a fixed jet. The only, there's maybe one application, which is if you're racing. Yeah. That's the only time I would possibly contemplate it. But for a road car that's run all year, the whole reason for having it is to make the car more livable with. So it compensates for the weather changing. Okay, so by the way, I said that holding back at 90 I asked you about was due to the vacuum pipe dropping off the dizzy. Okay. Catalin could be thrust washers. Yes, could be. Is it a new engine? That's the question I asked you.
Yeah,
when was it
he said
built?
yes.
Oh, he did. Okay. Oh yeah. Beg your pardon. Sorry. Yes, it's a new engine. How long has it been assembled? Minutes, hours, few weeks? Pete Allison, I've recommissioned a 91 Auto off the road for 13 years, 18 months to get it MOT'd and presentable as a dream car for my sister. One job leads to another, and I've learned everything from YouTube. Well done. Right, Caitlin Trifu, 1 year, not run much. Okay, I would suggest that you maybe want to check the. Well, there's a couple of things it could be. If it's got a very hard clutch in it, like a competition clutch, that might be an issue. But it could also be the fact that the thrust washers have been installed the wrong way around.
Yeah, I've seen that as well.
I mean, it could also be that the thrust washers have been installed on a crank that wasn't flat, so you've got a ridge which is wearing into and causing friction every time you put your foot on the clutch. So there's a number of things that could be, but the most important thing is it needs investigating. Steve Crook, you recently commented on A-Series engine Facebook group that we should be running hotter plugs. So for standard 998, should I change from BP6 to BP5s? Yes, unless you're running that standard 998 around the racetrack. Darren Robert Shaw, recurve dizzies, guys. In the future, I'm going stage 1. So if I have my dizzy recurve now, will it suit my stage 1 kit after, when the uprated exhaust system needle is fitted? That's a good question. If you don't know, well, the answer is yes. It would suit that. But the point is, you might be wasting your money. So what you might want to do is measure what you have now. Okay. Because what you have now may be suitable. And if you don't check that, then you don't know. So you could, I'm sure that either myself or Darren will sell you a distributor for a couple of £100. But the point is, do you need to actually spend that money? So you need to check that really with a strobe light and see what the timing figures are up the rev range, and then we can advise you whether it is changing or not. Catalin, yeah, we'll check. I will investigate. Thank you. Yeah, you need to investigate because basically when you put your foot on the clutch, there's extra friction happening. So you need to know why what's causing that.
I just want to on Darren's recurved question, what distributor is he running now?
Yes. So do you know what distributor you've got, Darren? Is it a 45, 59, 65, or is it a Ducelia? Or is it an older one? Is it a 25D?
Yeah.
65D. Okay. So 65D, depending on what you've got, could have all sorts of curves in it. So I would suggest you have a measure to understand what it's doing, and then we'll let you know if it needs one or not. So as I was saying earlier, it's that time of year now where people need to start, if you're putting the cars away for the winter, you need to start thinking about using stabilizer, okay? Because certainly this year we've noticed an increase in the water content of the ethanol-based fuels that I've been seeing used in minis, and I'm actually seeing damage on the needle in as little as 6 weeks. So seriously, if you're going to put your car away this winter, you need to stabilize the fuel.
$65D on Darren's distributor.
Yeah, yeah. ERC 1808. I have oily plugs between plug 1 and 3. Chances of head gasket oil way leak between those two cylinders. Could be a number of reasons for that, but what size is your engine and what plug range, heat range you're running? And does the car use oil anyway? Can you recommend a reasonable timing gun, Darren?
I like the Innovate 5568. It's the one with the dial back function. It's the one I use in all my videos. I think it's the same one that AC uses, but he also has a snap on as well.
Yeah, yeah. So
that
it's the one
seems
I
like
recommended in my video. Yeah.
Yeah, that seems like the lowest level you can get a fairly high quality timing light. You know, other ones don't seem to compare in terms of quality. That one's really nice. In fact, I have two of them now.
Yeah.
I just repaired an
I'll tell
older
you what
one.
I'll do is I'll just nip round and get one, and then we can show people what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, they're really good. They give you the option of well, first of all, it gives you a digital display of RPM, which I find very useful for setting mixture at idle, because I can see exactly when the idle stabilizes at whatever point I'm setting it at. And also it has a built-in sort of filter to deal with noise. So electrical noise in the alternator or the generator, it can handle a lot of the noise, whereas cheaper models don't handle the noise very well.
Okay. So what we're talking about,
Yeah, that one.
yeah, is that, which is the Innova 5568, and it's the one. This is the actual one I reviewed, and it's a spare timing light that I take with me. If you look at other YouTube channels with people like Nick's Garage, so Nick over there uses one of these on his dyno. So a lot of professionals use these. So it's a good timing light, and I think I paid about £140 for it. So I don't know what they cost in the States. I think they're a bit cheaper.
Similar. Yeah.
But I mean, if you shop around, you'll be able to get them. But highly recommended. Also does dwell measurements as well.
Yeah, I think you reviewed the 3568 before and found that was not as quality as the 5568
that's
was.
right. I did the black one, which is just the dial on it, and it wasn't all that. It was flitting around. Didn't have the smoothing circuit on it. I've just noticed that I've got impact damage. Somehow it's got a damaged screen, but
yeah, mine's melted on the backside from resting on the number 4 exhaust pipe. That's why I have two now.
Darren, I'm sure. Can you recommend? Yeah, that's the timing light. Okay, right. Caitlin, stabber in all my cars. Thank you very much. Found it at a local boat supply since eBay will not ship. Yeah, fair enough. But hopefully, Caitlin, you would have found that has transformed your ownership of the classic cars. because it stops the fuel going off and just enables easy starting and all the rest of it. K1808, 908 A plus BP5. Yes, a small amount of oil used. Yeah, so run the 5s. They should run cleaner. But if you've got 2 plugs that are not running the same color as the others, then you need to go through and check the compression of the cylinders if they're all even, and then just make sure that you've got the right power going through your spark plugs by making sure you've got the right coil, etc. And then obviously a good tune-up will clean up the plugs. But if your engine's burning oil, you'll still see that on one or two of the plugs. You won't ever, no tune-up will stop it burning oil.
Yeah, the red card to my right, that burns about a quart every 1,000 miles. And my plugs look really good except for one cylinder, which is really dark. But even then, the ignition system in that car is a high power system, and it can handle burning the oil. If it was any worse, I don't think it could do it, but it's just on the edge with the BP5 ES plugs.
Darren's asked, are they available in the UK? I'm sure you're talking about the timing light. Yes, I bought mine on Amazon, I think it was. So yeah, no problem. Keith of the Shire, CSI said it was okay to use copper core plug leads with their dizzies. I'm surprised that they said that. They are very low resistance. Well, that's up to them. It's not what I do, but you know, I'm not turning around and saying what I say is absolutely right, and I'm not saying what they say is absolutely right. So, you know, you pay your money, takes your choice. Steve Crook, what extraction method tool do you recommend to remove a broken head stud that snapped flush with the block? So Snap-on do a nice one, or Snap-on Blue Point do a nice one, which is has a drill guide and stuff like that for centering the drill, and then you push in a parallel bar which will then go down the center of the stud and take it out. But if it's really in there, you need heat. Okay, so I wouldn't attack any broken off stud if it's rusted in without any kind of heat. So my favorite heat for that is oxyacetylene. Thomas Classic and Modern, first time for I assume that's Ross. All right, Ross. Seen the damage to needless following layup more often here too. Yeah, so he's noticed it as well, and that's good because Ross sees a lot of engines, a lot of cars, and you know, he has a lot of cars there that have been laid up for restoration. So yeah, he will definitely see that. Any install we carry out now gets a shot of Stabil and a bottle for the customer to keep. Now that is a sensible business. Looking after the customer. Well done, Ross. That's very sensible.
I might have to start doing that as well. Just send them out with the stabilizer.
That's it. Yeah. Okay, Dion. Yeah, with the Evo cam, it recommends valve springs are double, which is high. Yeah. Okay. Gonna run it with that. Yes. Okay. So, which Evo cam are we talking about, Dion? The only springs I ever used on any road engine are CAEA 525s from Mini Spares. £160 springs. They'll run to 7,000 res if you set them up properly. What more do you need on a road engine? K1808, available from Amazon USA in the UK. A ball ache of a wait. I had to wait for mine. Best order it tonight and it'll be there when you want it. Key for the Shire, I'm actually going to use lumination leads on mine. Fine.
Yeah, as long as the resistance is right.
Yeah. Darren Roberts, no UK hits for the Innova 5568. Mine come from the States via Amazon, so just buy it on there. Okay, Dion, yeah, okay. Evo 1, you only need 525 valve springs for that. But, and this is important, when you fit them on the cylinder head, make sure they're shimmed at 75 pounds, all right, with a seated load. Don't just fit them because they'll only be about 58 or something like that. You need to shim them when you put them on. Yeah, you won't get core binding with the 525 springs. Not even with the 1.5 rocker, which I don't recommend using.
Yeah, the 1.3s produce plenty of lift.
Yeah.
Unless you're a race team, then you can just rebuild heads and motors all day long.
Yep.
In fact, there's a car coming in that has a set of 1.5s, and I think it's ruined a lifter or a cam or both.
How long have they been in there? 10,000 miles?
Years.
Yeah.
I don't know how many miles.
It'll have flat lobe on the cam. It'll just be destroyed. Yeah.
Yeah.
David Small, how often should I drive my car throughout the winter to avoid the need for stabil? Why on earth would you want to do that?
Oh, that's David. Hi, David. You got to keep the fuel fresh, man.
Yeah. So, okay, David, I'll give you a serious answer. Carry on driving the car like you would do in the summer. No problem. Mini J, what I'm reading determines if HT leads need replacing. And also, when timing with vacuum removed, do you block the pipe? Okay. Do you want to answer that one, Darren? Or do you want me to do it? It's up to you.
So, between 3 and 5K, if you're not going to be using resistor plugs, then you need very low resistance wires. It depends on the distributor if it can handle solid core wires or not. I wouldn't use them either, but you just have to figure out what the module is if you have a module type distributor. But yeah, you want the total resistance between 3 and 5 thou, or as close as that as you can get.
Okay, so when the timing the vacuum removed, do you block the pipe? You can block the pipe if it keeps the engine running easier for you. You can block the pipe. I don't block the pipe. Sometimes I might need to stick my finger over the hole, but typically what I'll do is if I take the pipe off and I'm working on it, I'll just give the idle screw a quick twist to compensate so it stays running while I'm doing that. And just to back up what Darren was saying there, with the ohm resistance on the leads, factory leads were typically sort of 4.5 to 5 to 5.5K. So I tend to go on the, if it's over that, they need replacing. So I like to keep them as low as possible, in the 1 to 2 to 3K range. Any more than that, and you're going to start losing potential performance. And what I mean by performance is the ability to light off a lean mix. It's not necessarily power here; it's the sharpness of the engine and how well it lights off a nice lean fuel burn. David Small, winters aren't so bad. Well, if you can drive the car, then fine. But what you have to remember with alcohol fuel is it's always absorbing moisture. So even if you have fresh fuel, it will gather water over a period of time. And if you use a stabilizer, you're always better off to do that. So if you're going to use the car and maybe use it through the winter, then maybe you want, rather than the storage one, use the Darren, if you can hold up the bottle, 360.
Yes, 360.
Yeah, if you use the 360 and just use it every time you fill up, that will actually clean your system. Yeah. And by the way, Stabil don't pay me to say this. I'm not paid to say this. I say it because it bloody works. Yeah. And it makes your life easier with a classic car. So I don't get paid any money for recommending this product. I'm just telling you because I know it will make a difference to your ownership.
I think if you were able to go through a tank every couple of months, that might be sufficient. But you've seen damage after 6 weeks. So
Yes.
that might
Yeah.
not be fast enough.
Yeah. In that particular case, the guy was using E10 fuel in the UK, and he told me he fitted the needle 6 weeks ago. He knew the exact date, and it was a brand new needle. And when I took it out 6 weeks later, it wasn't shiny anymore, so it was already going. So I said to him, you know, for Christ's sake, start using stabilizer because it's already going. So that was my first look at E10 with the 8 to 9% or whatever it is of ethanol in it now. It is really making a difference. Okay, some people, so Keith the Shaft, some people use fuel pressure regulators. I won't be fitting one, but is there a benefit for standard cars? Yes, there is a benefit, and it's called excess wastage. Okay, so if you're going over a bumpy road and it's bumping up and down and the jet's bumping up and down and letting in excess fuel, you've got a lower pressure. You've got more of a chance of holding that fuel back and not wasting any. All right. So actually, a lower fuel pressure is easier for the float bowl to control on rough terrain, or if you're driving over bumps and things like that. So in reality, the car will actually use a little bit, a tiny bit less fuel if you've got a well-regulated fuel supply. So my advice to you is every car should have one, especially a road car, to make sure that you're minimizing the amount of wasted fuel. So if you're not planning to use one, well, if you only need about 1.5 to 2 psi, yeah, 2.5 psi maximum. So in reality, I think when I was running my own car, I used to run 2 psi on twin carbs, knowing that I've got 2 float bowls at 2 psi, which is gallons of fuel, and I managed to achieve 58 miles to the gallon on that. So what I'm saying is, fuel pressure does actually make a difference because it's enabling you to lose less when the going's a bit rough.
That's also a reason why they designed the HIF carb.
Yeah, bigger float, give you a bit more ability to seal that off. Synchronized drinking, I love it.
Well, if you have a standard SU pump, it puts out approximately the right pressure. Like
It does.
you don't need to use it if you have a standard pump.
Oh, that is a good point, actually. A few weeks ago, I sold a carburetor to a guy, I think it was at the Essex tuning day, and it leaked. And then so I thought, okay, well, it might be a faulty valve. So I got a spare one and put that on. That leaked as well at the same time. And I thought, right, 2 cars aren't the problem. So I measured the fuel delivery pressure. It was 4.25 psi, and it was off one of them wretched cheap pumps that seem to be on the market at the moment, the £26 ones. Do not fit them. They are shit. Fit the £130 one. I know it's like, a lot more money, but it's the right pressure and it does the job. Tom's Classic Modern. What lambda gauge setups are you using these days? I think I recommend the one from Fuel Performance, which is the Innovate one with the LSU 4.9 wideband. So it's the same one I've always recommended there, Ross. Works well, and you can use it. I think you can also use it for live data and things like that. A bit of data logging. Okay. The only thing about it is you can't switch it easily with a switch to go from AFR to Lambda. You have to hook it up to a computer.
But if you're doing data logging, you've already got the computer hooked up, so you can switch that way. There's no like built-in internal data logging on that system. Yeah, it's only done via external computer.
Yeah. Okay. Keith of the Shire, got Stabil, never heard of it until I saw your videos. Well, excellent. So we're doing the right thing. We're spreading the word. It's a product that's been around for absolutely years. There are other manufacturers that make stabilizers. So the reason why I chose Stabil is because I used it in my lawnmower and it works fantastically. It's an American product, and I know that what the Americans would be like. You guys sue the shit out of people who sell duff shit. So if it wasn't any good, they wouldn't be in business anymore. So that's why I use it. Back to the noughties. Where can I get an AC Dodd mug? Okay. I haven't currently got any, but I am getting some more stock in. So if you drop me a message on Messenger, just because you're on the live chat, I'll see if I can get you one posted. All right. Normally you have to get one. You can only get one by stop me and buy one when I'm on the road. But I'll make a little exception. Okay. Keith of the Shire, want to keep a standard look under the bonnet, so not keen on a reg. Put it inside. Robert Shaw, how fast is the lawnmower? Sadly, very standard.
I'm sure a little porting work would make you go faster.
Keith of the Shire, now got a wideband and tailpipe set up as well, thanks to your videos. Well, good. I'm glad that people are finding them useful, and we're not people are starting to take a bit more interest in setting up their engines. And I personally couldn't believe the amount of people running around with rich mixtures and black plugs and all the rest of it. It's terrible. So if the videos are helping, that's fantastic. Clint Ford, hi Clint. The Smurfs driving great on the new Dizzy. I stripped down the old Dizzy on inspection. The advance only goes 3/4 and goes stiff to the last quarter to full advance. Yeah, would that also explain my flat spot not protect? Well, maybe a bit, but your issue was the progression on the needle. So just for everybody else, Clint Ford, Clint's a customer of mine that I had I see at car shows, and I just tuned his car and his brother's car at the Isle of Wight a few weeks back, or last weekend, and they're going. Both of those cars are going very well. So those guys are very happy. But they had new distributors fitted, recurved dizzies, and both of the cars obviously responded very, very well. Rob Davis, needle and spring recommendation as a starting point for HS4 carbs on a 1310 with a 276 K&M filters. So I'm sure that's twin carbs, yeah? Until I can get it properly dialed in, thanks. Keep up the good work. Well, okay. So I would say that you probably need, what's the cam? Has it got 1.5 rockers? What rocker ratio, Rob? Back to the noughties. How many different advance curves are there? There doesn't seem to be much rhyme nor reason in what is fitted to what car. They often seem to show slow and too long. Yes. I stopped worrying about how many the factory produced many, many years ago, because the factory produced ones are all largely not right for performance. They were produced for different reasons, typically economy and to avoid warranty claims. So in terms of what you need to worry about, basically you need the advanced adjusted to give you what your engine needs. So even if you get one off of myself or Darren, it's only a guess based on experience. The actual way to do it is to take the figures on a dyno and then replicate that by making a dizzy to produce the figures that you've actually measured needed. But of course, nobody wants to spend the time and money to do that. So effectively, the figures I produce and the ones that Darren uses, they come from me as well. Darren has the ability, because he lives at altitude, so he's able to adjust for altitude as well, and therefore we can, between us, we got it covered effectively. Darren is the only one so far that's done my dizzy training. So there are other people that are waiting. So in the future that will change, and there should be more people to do that. But at the moment, Darren's got the Dizzy training, and he's in the United States, so he's well placed to ship out all over that place.
Yeah, I can build them to whatever curve is needed. I know that Troy Powell's in chat. He got a custom recurve distributor, and he also went onto a dyno to check out what advanced timing is required for his card. I believe he ended up slightly under 30 degrees, which produced the best horsepower for his motor. But he went through the trouble of checking it on a dyno. Maybe if Troy's still here, he can comment on that.
Timbo, hi both. Any plans for a visit to Mini Medics or that area of the country? I already went this year, so you missed it.
It's too far for me.
yeah. Darren's not going to get on a plane, and he's not going to come over here and do tune-ups for 80 quid a car with a plane ticket from Colorado. It's not going to happen.
I don't think all the stuff would fit in 2 bags of luggage.
Yeah. Darren Robert Shaw, is there any servicing we should be doing on Dizzies? Cleaning, oil, springs, etc. Just guessing. Oh, that's a good question. So, yeah, I mean, basically lubrication, and then just making sure that the distributor is delivering what it should deliver, and that's checking with a strobe light and making sure the vacuum unit's working, and if you're still using points, making sure the points are set correctly, got the right dwell, etc.
If you're going to take it apart, be careful taking the springs off, because you can change the timing just taking the springs off and putting them back on again.
So I'll go one stage further than that, Darren. Don't touch the springs.
Yeah, but yeah, don't touch the springs would be ideal. Yeah, I spent a lot of time making springs to match the application, and sometimes it's the difference between 3 coils and 3.5 coils to get the exact RPM point I want the curve to change inflection points at. They're very sensitive devices.
Okay, Rob Davis, yes, 1.5 rockers and twin HS4s. Right, so you're probably going to end up with something like 2 red springs and a treble A needle-ish. That treble A might be too rich, so don't go for a treble A now. I would start with a pair of AAE needles, okay, and then take it to a rolling road or get a wideband fitted. Make sure that when those needles are in, that you're running sensibly lean. Sort of if this is a new engine, you want to be running Lambda 1 or slightly leaner, 101, 105, something like that. Yeah. And then once it's run in, you need to set that up so that you've got sort of 0.93, 0.95 lambda idle. And then you need to make sure that you've got enough fuel when you stand on it. All right. So really, AAE, get it, and then get it on a dyno, get it run in. Clint Ford, they now go like a dog that's been stung in the bollocks by a wasp. That was the results of my tune-up last weekend on both of their cars. So that's anyway. Thank you very much for the feedback. No problem, Darren. As I say, not many people ask about servicing, but I come out to a lot of cars, and the shaft hasn't been oiled, so the Dizzy's seized up. There is actually one video. I think it was season 1 where I went out to an original Cooper in 60 something or other Cooper, and it had just that. That was the problem with it. It hadn't had. Despite the owner polishing it and all the rest of it, they hadn't necessarily been looking at the finer details of lubricating the distributor. So it actually started to seize up, and by the time I got there, there was no advance. So that was the lack of performance. So I was luckily enough able to free up the original distributor, lubricate it, and then obviously the performance came back.
Yeah, and I had a video of looking at one that was totally just worn out. I think it had 30 degrees of play in the dwell just because it was so sloppy. And again, lack of servicing and just too many years of use finally killed it.
Back to the noughties. Maybe Clint's comment could be used for your marketing.
Hey, now
Stung
you have
in
to
the
get another
bollocks
mug.
by a wasp. I love it.
Yeah, get it put on the bottom of the mug here. That picture.
Or maybe on the next ones, I'll have a little wasp coming along. Oh, we got, what's it? We got 30, 39 people in the chat room. Not too bad. About the same as usual. So,
Yeah, we were up to 45 at one point.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Darren says, so what parts and what oil? My Disney is 30 years old. Doubt it's been touched. As only 21,000 on the clock. Okay. So, yeah, it's basically engine oil is what you use for lubrication. But if you've got points distributor, then I use a little bit of bearing grease, a tiny amount on the cam lobe. That's it. Well, thank you for the aid. So tiny about bearing grease on there. They do actually make a proprietary product. It's very difficult to get now, which is basically points lube for lubricating the camshaft. But I've always used bearing grease, and it's always worked for me. But the point is, don't put great dollops of it on because it flies off and it can cause misfiring inside the distributor cap. So it's just really to wet the cam rather than to have great big dollops of it on the inside. And then if you just point again to where they put the oil down the down the shaft.
Yeah, it's where the screw is.
Yeah, where the screw is. So when you take your dizzy cap off and you take the rotor arm off, there might be a felt pad there. The idea really is to what I tend to do on an old one is remove the felt pad, put a squirt of oil underneath it, put the felt pad back, and then put another drop on the felt pad, and then put the top back on. Okay, so Darren Robshaw, electronic. Yeah, okay, so let's say, all right, so if it's electronic, there's no moving parts. So just make sure that when you suck on the vacuum pipe that the vacuum advance is working, if it's got it fitted, and just make sure that everything's clean and you've got a new cap and new rotor fitted and the rotor's not flapping about. And if you've got electronic, if you've got one of those distributors that's got a plastic pickup that goes around the cam and it's loose, not good. Right, so if loose is not good, so you need to fix that if it is.
Yeah, you'll have timing errors with a loose reluctor ring.
Yeah. Tom Hill. I have an old 1388 series block lying around where the oil gallery on cylinder 4 has burst through the bottom. Can I just sleeve the bore, or is it scrap? Sleeve the bore. That's what I do. Just sleeve the bore. Bearing in mind, sleeving's not cheap. So by the time you sleeve and bought pistons, you're probably nearly £700. Maybe not your bag, but can you recommend a good spot welder? Yeah, I mean the only ones I've had experience of is the little. If it's a DIY one, the little one from Machine Mart with the timer on it with a single plug. That it's all it's all contained in the same unit. That works well for DIY stuff on a Mini. But if you want something more commercial, then just go to one of the usual welding suppliers, and they'll set you up with something manly that will last forever. Obviously, it has the appropriate cost increase. Timbo, does Darren come across the same tuning issues and fuel degradation in Canada as AC does in? Right, so okay, he's in Colorado, not Canada, but as AC does in the UK. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I'll let you answer that.
yeah, it's ethanol is what it is. So if you have ethanol in your fuel, you're going to have ethanol related problems. So if you don't have ethanol fuel in Canada, then you're not going to see the same issues. But yeah, what we're talking about is essentially ethanol related. And it's because, the ethanol fuel is designed for cars with sealed fuel systems. We don't have sealed fuel systems. So that's why we get the moisture and the separation issues. I mean, even the gas cap on my tank has ethanol damage.
What's the ethanol content where you are?
It's either 5 or 10%.
Okay, so it's the same as where we are, yeah. But it's going to go up, so I'm led to believe in the future.
Well,
So.
I know that the fuel that Troy has on Washington State, he's like 15% out there.
Yeah, so he's going to, yeah, yeah, okay. These will be worse, yeah. Hopefully that answers your question, Timbo. Back to the noughties, I had a 65D that the mechanical mechanism sees at full advance. Yeah, it's common. And the reason why it's common on a 65D is you can't get into it to lubricate it, so it rusts up. It has no means of external lubrication apart from one little black cap on the side, but you can only get into the side and you have to rotate it to get all the mechanism, and then you can't get onto the central shaft, so it's just, it's not really sensible. Keith of the Shire, I have a CSI Dizzy, so for the 998 stage 1, initially picked map 7 and 10 degrees at idle, not road tested yet. Okay. Well, I'm unfamiliar with the CSI Dizzy maps. I know of the CSI Dizzy because I've come across a few, but I couldn't tell you which map was what without looking at the instructions.
I wish they made the CSI with compatible with lower resistance coils. I think the 1.5 is the lowest it goes. I wish it went down to the 0.8.
Yeah, I think some of these distributor suppliers are missing the trick, and I think it comes down to the fact is it doesn't affect power. It doesn't really affect top end power, but it does affect your ability to light off a lean mix. And if you're road cars, then that's what it's all about.
Well, you have a great video of doing coil tests at RPM.
Yeah. Maybe I need to come up with a better one, with a high power one, to show the difference. Okay, so any more questions? Seem to have slowed down a little bit. We're up to 46 people now. Let's have a few more thumbs up. Everybody out there, give me a thumbs up. That'll be great. Thank you.
Oh, Keith is talking about the coil. The 3 ohm versus a 0.8, they look identical.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm not quite sure about your comment there, Keith. You should be able to get a 1.5 ohm coil that looks like a standard one.
Yeah.
Within reason. Thanks for the likes, guys. I see the count going up. Keep punching that like. Thank you. Excellent. Look at them all coming in now. Thank you. Oh, Andy Murdoch. Hi, guys. I run a 45 Weber 1310 modified engine. Plugs are black. Not looking good. Yeah. Is this inherent with a Weber, or can I get it running better? Has been on a rolling road. Go back to the rolling road and tell them to do the job properly. Yeah. No rolling road should be leaving an engine running black plugs. It's just not acceptable. Yeah. The only time that engine should be running rich is when it's at full bore, and that's when you need the protection of rich fuel mixture. If it's idling, it should be sensibly idling with as least fuel as you can get away with and make it run nicely.
Especially on a rolling road where they have all the resources in the world to recreate any driving condition they want.
Yeah. I know. It's painful. Keith of the Shire, CSI say it must be a 3 ohm. Say la vie. If that's what they say, then that's what you have to have.
Yeah, that's. You just got to go with what they recommend because they're the ones who
Yeah.
built the thing.
Yeah. I mean, I just think they're missing a trick. You know, effectively, if you take a 65D Dizzy and then fit one of them, you're going backwards in ignition power. Why would you do that? It just makes no sense whatsoever. Duckens, when I tune the SU, it always runs well, but it goes out of tune often, and I don't see anywhere. Okay, so how are you tuning the SU, Duckens? From Andy, I've got a 998 CCA plus that's been bored 20 out of a standard head, out of a standard head or an old 202. Which one? Okay, right, out of a standard head or a 202. Which one would be best to get modified? 202, easy. Hi, Clint. Okay, how much would it cost for you to do stand? I'll answer that one after this. I don't want to talk money on this this medium, but I'll talk to you afterwards, Clint. All right. Back to the noughties. Are there any textbooks or learning resources that have helped you over the years? Yes, yes, there are. So one of the best ones wasn't Vizard, and it was the Engine Builder's Handbook, and it was it's written by a US author. Can't remember the details. It's an old book now, but it's very good because it actually tells you how to build an engine, which a lot of them don't normally do. So the Engine Builder's Handbook, although it's based on V8 engines, it's all in there. Okay. The Vizard's Bible was also a useful read, but I think most people have read that. So yeah, those are influential books. I've read a lot of Vizard stuff. I've also read Des Hamill and a few others. I don't necessarily agree with them all, but back when I was younger, they were the people I read, and they were the people that I learned from. But in reality, when you go and do your own things, some things aren't quite as what you see in a book.
A lot of it's about observing the changes that occur to your engine or whatever you're doing. You know, when I make small fueling changes, I'm always paying attention to what it's doing at various RPM points on the highway, just to make sure that I haven't compromised some other place. And I'm watching my gauges. So it's one is understanding what you're changing, and then two is observing the reaction that the engine has with the changes you've made, because they're all different. They're all going to run slightly differently.
Andy Murdoch's just got back on his 45 Weber. The chokes are 36. That sounds about right for a road car. I won't name names, but they're in the north of England. Okay, that's fine. But I wouldn't accept black pugs. If you have any car that goes on a rolling road session and the plugs are black afterwards, they haven't done the right job. Yeah. Thumbs up from Chuck Heiser.
Hey, Chuck. Also, on Andy's, what ignition system is it running as well?
Kiefer Shire, the tunable CSI Dizzy can run a low ohm coil. Swift tune set it. Sensible. So that's the mappable version. So it's like I suppose it's like everything. You've got to buy the high dollar one to get all the functions. Again, that's one of the reasons why I use Power Spark Dizzies. There's no price difference, or a fiver or something like that. It's very it's almost hardly worth them selling the standard one. If it was me, I'd be telling them just stop one type, but that's me.
What I like about the Power Spark is, we can modify it, but if anything ever happens to the module, you just change the module and you still have the curve. If one of those electronic ones goes out, you have to install the curve and all that stuff. So potentially you could be, back on the road faster with a module type versus reprogramming an old, a new unit.
Mr. McKinnon, I'm trying to figure out how an engine that is just sitting there at idle isn't running on just fuel. Not quite sure what you're after there, or what you're asking. Andy, thanks. Could you recommend a good cam for a fast road application? What rev range do you drive in? Andy Murdoch, Speed Pro mini tuning book is good. I'm not, well, I might have had that one, but I can't remember it. Thanks for the thumbs up. Back to the noughties. Catalin, nice t-shirt, Darren.
Oh yeah. I figure it's appropriate.
Some assembly required. Yeah, it's a good t-shirt. Yeah. Thomas Classic Modern. Thanks, Ross. Appreciate the thumbs up. Andy Murdoch. I have one of AC's Dizzies with a Petronix electronic module. That's obviously one I've curved yet. Hopefully it's good, Andy. Stephen Bloxham. Who's the best pistons for a Rover MPI? If you can get a set of standard ones, they're very good. That would be number 21963. Some people still sell them, but failing that, then if you're just doing a standard rebuild, all you want to use is a set of 21253, the old Cooper S piston. Key for the Shire, made up 1.4. Yeah, okay. So that's talking about the weight for doing the dash pot. He's referring to my video where I put a lay gear on top of the dash pot so you can time how long it drops. Yeah, so all you have to remember with that, Keith, is it's a guide and it's to start only. So once you get it on the car, what that test does is tells you it's working, and then when you get it on the car, you still have to tune it. So you can't get around that. Tuning it is important. Okay, Duckham's getting back, tuning at HS2 with a mixer screw. Well, that's the problem then. If you're turning the mixer screw, then you will make it sensitive to weather changes and things like that, because you're basically too rich at idle, so it will run differently on different days. The adjustment don't last. That's it. Yeah, that's right. So what you need to do is tune it properly by having a needle reprofiled to suit your car. You can't do that. You can't tune an SU by just turning the mixer screw. All right. So mixer screw is for setting idle mix only. Get the all-knowing nod from Darren there.
Well, I think they call it the idle mixture screw.
Yeah.
Like the name implies what it's for. But yeah, it's common to see that people, richen up the idle mixture screw to fix a problem at the mid-range or the top end, and that just ruins everything else because all I can really do is change the idle mixture,
including the piston rings and the bores.
Yeah. I mean, with an HS2, you may also be dealing with throttle shaft issues as well.
Yeah, so that is a good point there for you there, Duckham's. Is if you've got a worn carburetor, it will change. But if the carburetor is in good condition, turning the mixer screw to tune it is not the way to do it.
Yeah, I know, AC, you've been posting pictures of your new throttle shaft bushings that you've been having made.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm jealous.
Yeah, you just. Well, I've only got 2 left. That's it. So there's only 2 in there, and that's because I've used the others on testing, fitting them in a couple of car bodies, which I've done.
Go back to your box. Show the people what the box looks like on the front, because it has your ranges for tolerances on them. Yeah, so this is why AC needs to get bushings made so he can deal with carburetors that have bodies that are too worn beyond a standard bushing size. He can fit the appropriate size bushing to deal with wear and to get a perfect fit on the shafts.
So I grade them to. That's just what's that? Yeah, that's less than half a thou. So I grade them out to, so I can select the exact one to keep the fits all the same. Keith of the Shire, I noticed on Berla's website there are loads of different SU jets. I thought there were only a few different ones. Yeah, but there are only a few different ones, but there's lots of different jet pipes, on the bottom of the pipe that you can, the length of the pipe and all this sort of thing for different angles. So therefore the part numbers, rack up. So you can quite easily have only a few different jets, but you could have 30 or 40 different part numbers because of all the different pipe lengths of pipes on them, for example. So yeah. Darren Robert Shaw, recent discussion on TMF. I was advised to turn my mixer screw as my plugs were looking rich. Was this wrong? No. The point is, you need to set that mixture screw so that it is running sensibly lean at idle. And what I mean by that is if you're based in the UK, then it will pass emissions. Yeah, that's the setting that you should be setting it at. And then if it drives terribly after that, it's because you need the engine tuning, and you need the appropriate profile of needle in there to take it from the proper base idle setting and deliver the right fueling across the rev range. That is why the car runs badly, because the needle profile is not the correct one. If you've got black plugs, the way the SU works is, if you're at idle, typically what happens if you wind that mixture screw up to try and make it drive properly, all that does is that pushes the idle mix up through the roof. And every time the engine comes back to idle, it's just chewing its piston rings, wearing its cylinder bores out, and blackening your plugs and just chewing your wallet out. So, use that mixture nut with extreme caution. The only setting should be just enough fuel to stop it running, lumpy at idle. Yeah, that's with a standard cam, clearly. So if it runs sweetly, you use the least amount of fuel that it will run sweetly. Okay, that's even given in the SU tuning manuals.
Yeah, every one of those manuals has a nice chart you can refer to, and it talks about setting the idle mixture. That's also why I like using that Innovate timing light, is because with the digital RPM display, you can really see where it's really happy to idle at, what RPM. You can find a nice sweet spot. It'll reach a peak, and then it'll start oscillating badly one way or the other. It's a very handy tool.
So just to sum up, Darren, no, that wasn't the wrong information. What will happen is the car will run nicely at idle, but when you drive it, it probably won't drive very nicely at all, and that's because it needs tuning properly. And tuning properly isn't turning the mixer screw to make it run better.
Yeah, realistically, Darren should probably get an air fuel gauge in the car.
Yeah.
Start there.
Yeah, if he fits a wideband gauge in the car, you'll be able to understand what the fueling's doing, and you'll see that it's too lean, and then you need to do something about it. So just to clarify what we were saying there, if the plugs are black, it's because it's running rich, and it's running rich because someone has turned the mixture up trying to make the car drive properly. So if you turn the mixture back down to where it needs to be so that it's nice and clean at idle, you will then find it's then too lean as you drive it. And that's why you need it tuned properly, to have the right profile needle and the right spring to make sure that that's delivering the fuel it needs when it's driving. And not only that, it's the right oil as well. So there's, effectively 4 things you need to be looking at with an SU, and that is your needle, your spring, your oil, and obviously the setting, the mixture nut. All those things need to be just so in order to make the engine run properly.
And then throw in an air filter. 5 things.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can run very clean. There's no reason that you should have black plugs. In fact, the plugs in that red car, after all the tuning work, look identical to the plugs in this injection car. They're nice and clean. They've got good burn.
That's something you could show people. I don't know if you could whip a plug out, Darren.
Yeah, I can grab one
if it's convenient. One out of each engine.
Yeah.
And then people can see what we're talking about. So just to show people what we're talking about, Darren currently has an SPI Mini in his workshop, and he also has his 70s 998 Carburetor Mini in, which he's tuned. And what we'll show you, hopefully.
So that's the plug out of the injection car. I've driven this maybe 100 miles, 150 miles, but you can see it's it's a very clean plug.
Yeah.
It's a brand new plug.
Yeah, so that's a brand new plug that's done 100 miles, and we know that the engine is fueling properly. So what he's now going to do is go over to his car, pull out a spark plug out of a carburetor car that's been tuned properly, so you can see the difference. All right. So he's just removing a plug, and he'll be back over, and then we can hold the two up, and then you can see the difference. Right, so put the two together. So fuel injection one is on the is the one he's indicating there with his finger, and the carburetor SU one is the other one, obviously. Yeah. Okay, and what's the mileage difference between the two there, Darren?
This has nearly 2,000 miles on it.
Yeah.
This is 200 maybe.
Yeah. So you can see even with 2,000 miles, she's still running clean. And that's the point. If you've got your car's carburetor set properly, that's the color of your plugs that you need to come out. They will be injection clean.
Now they are different heat ranges, but the coloring is identical.
Yeah, well, that's because the SPI is a 1275 engine, but it's indicating that they're both burning the same. Hopefully that's helpful to people. Okay, key for the Shire. I broke my first wideband sensor when I initially had it pushed in the tailpipe. Yeah, you probably did in the tailpipe if you put it into a rich engine. So I've killed sensors doing that. So what I tend to do now is I do a lot of revving once I've cleaned up the mixture and clear the crap out the exhaust system before I put my probe up the back. Darren Robert Shaw, the colour issue with the plugs was solved by yourself. You advised on the plug type and plug gap. After you commented that the colour was much better, the mixture screw wasn't touched. Yeah, there we go. So having the right heat range and the gap does make a difference. Clint Ford, on our chat at Isle of Wight, is there any do's and don'ts on changing gear ratios through the drop gears? Engine's running the 3.1 diff and sits at 4,070. So if you've got the economy, when Mini J, when tuning the car, why is this done minus the air filter initially when it runs with the air filter in place? It's probably watching the videos.
Yeah. Well, you take the air filter off because it can be a restriction. The air filter or the air filter housing, both of which can be restrictions. So you want to make sure the fueling is right before you bring in any possible restrictions. Ideally, you'd have a good filter that doesn't have a restriction or a filler housing that's not restrictive. Yeah. But we always take them off. One, because you have to get them off anyway to get to the tuning parts.
Yeah. That's my key is in order to get access to the carb and take the top on and off and all the rest of it, you have to take the air filter off. So I take it off and leave it off. Now, if I've got a drilled air box, for example, then I know with a Can-Am filter in it, I know it doesn't make any difference to the fueling, right? But if I haven't got a drilled airbox, like if we say examples where I'm doing the standard 850s with the silly tin box on, I know that makes a difference. So I do some adjustments, and then I have to put the airbox on to test it with the airbox on to make the fueling right. So airboxes have to be on in order to make sure the fueling is correct. It's just that because of my experience, I know which airboxes cause me problems. And equally, if I've got a larger engine, I know that that will draw harder on a given airbox. So, for example, if you've got a standard plastic case and you've got 1275, you need a lot more holes in it, yeah, to make that flow enough air to not affect the reading.
In the video where I tuned the 998 that I got 60 miles to the gallon out of it, I showed where I was hitting a restriction at a 4,000 and 4 to 5,000 RPMs. The fueling was going from lambda 1 without the filter on it. I put the filter on it, it went down to 0.85. So it was a 15% airflow restriction at that particular RPM point, which is why I had to drill out the box on that particular car. But it was just right away, you can tell a difference with that filter in place.
Darren Robert Shaw, sweet, mine are exactly that color. Excellent. Key for the Shire, those plugs will remember that. Yeah. So, and that's the point. So thanks for getting them out, Darren, because people can see, you know, you've got a carburetor car one side and an injection car the other, plugs are the same. And they should be, because the combustion is the same, because they've been both set to do, you know, one, the factory has set it to be right, and the other one, you've set it to be right. And that's the important thing.
And that's why having the air fuel gauge in your car is really useful. You can tweak and modify and get it all set up so it runs really cleanly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it cruises nicely. I mean, I get 45 imperial miles a gallon out of that car on the highway.
Yeah, I think you get even more than that, don't you, on a long run? Yeah.
Yeah. I can get close to 50 if all I do is sit at maybe 65 miles an hour.
Yeah. And this is an engine that's well worn, and it burns oil, and it's got a noticeable compression difference, I think, on number 3 cylinder. Yeah.
It's a standard compression motor. It's not even a high compression 998. It's a standard compression.
8.3 to 1, then he's getting nearly 50 out of it. So,
yeah. It's so on the leak down test, it's like 8 to 10% on cylinders 1, 2, and 4, and then it's in the mid 20s on 3.
Yeah.
And I know it's not the head because I just rebuilt the head, so it's all past the rings.
Darren Robert Shaw, is the Gunson color tune of any use to a beginner like myself? Planning eventually on a wideband, but waiting until a new exhaust is fitted. So having used the Gunson color tune many years ago, the problem with the color tune is it's quite coarse. Yeah. So you know, aim for a blue flame, but what kind of blue? You know, you could, you know, so it's very difficult. Doesn't give you, you know, what it does is it gives it in big handfuls. Clearly, if it's orange, it's too rich. Clearly, if it's blue, it's probably somewhere near right. But there's quite a long window there, quite a large window. So personally, having used a color tune and then gone to a wideband, I wouldn't waste my money on a color tune. I'll go straight for a wideband.
Yeah, I have 3 wideband or color tune kits sitting in my shelf collecting dust. I never use them.
Clint Ford said didn't get any of the comment. He didn't hear it. Okay, sorry about that, Clint. So what we were basically saying there is there's no real pitfalls. You just fit the high ratio economy drop gears, but you must make sure they're in good condition, especially the primary gear. So don't just fit a second-hand one. Make sure the bushes are in good condition, and if they're not, then have them rebushed before you fit them. Keith of Shire, do you do other SU carburetor cars? There are loads out there. Rovers, Jags, yeah. Yes, I do. So if you look at my videos recently, there was a V8 on there. I think a couple of series ago, I did an Ambassador. I do, Austins and Morris Minors and all sorts of things. So the problem is when you show minis on YouTube, then you only get phone calls about tuning minis. All right. So I would quite happily do other cars, but I need to show other cars in order to get more business, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and the Stromberg cars are the same way, same design, just different parts, basically. So all the Triumphs and things like that,
Yeah.
MGBs.
And the biggest problem with a lot of the Triumphs and the MGBs is that people have worn SUs. So one of my things is I won't come out to a car if it's got some old SUs on it. You might as well, I can come out to it, tune it, and then it won't be right by the time you've driven it around the block. So you need the SUs to be in freshly rebuilt condition before you tune, because they just won't stay there otherwise. Oh, we've got nearly 50 online now. We're going well. Just to let people know, obviously, because it's October now, the tuning season for me finishes in the end of October. I think there's a last hurrah this year at the beginning of November at ML Motorsport. He normally has the last, my last available booking for the year, and then I stop for the winter, and then I'll restart again in March. That doesn't necessarily mean I won't be tuning, but I'll only be going out if it's nice and warm. Then I'll getting cold fingers tuning.
You also did a Mustang, I believe, recently.
Oh yes, I did do a Mustang. Didn't have an SU on it though. Thanks for reminding me. I think it had an Autolite 1100 carburetor on it, so it was a lovely original. I suppose you could say Survivor. Yeah, I think it was a 66, something like that, 67 Mustang with a can't remember the engine. 200, was it a 200 Ford straight six, something like that, 3.3 litre. And it wasn't running particularly well, but it was using a lot of fuel. So the owner, I'd already tuned minis for him before, so he brought it over and says, "Is there anything you can do with this the Mustang to improve its fuel consumption?" There was a few jokes. It's just like something about the 3.3 litre engine under the bonnet, but all seriousness, as soon as I put the sniffer up the tailpipe and then started having an investigation, sure enough, as soon as I opened the throttle, it was dropping to 0.6. I think it was 0.66 every time you move the throttle. It was hosing fuel in. So in the end, I looked at the timing and guessed what the timing should be. So we basically I adjusted that. And then at the time, I couldn't even get the plugs out because I felt it needed a set of plugs, but we couldn't get them out. So what I did do is I managed to adjust the accelerator pump jet, and on that particular carburetor, you do it by bending an arm. So I bent it so it was basically shut. so when you open the throttle, it kind of instead of going like really lean, it was kind of about 1.03 lambda when you open the throttle, and I thought I'll leave it there. And the owner reported to me afterwards that it was way better on fuel. So his around town experience was a lot more palatable, I think, after we'd done that. So it was just a very small modification, but it made all the difference. That engine was running perfectly. Part throttle was running 0.92, 0.93, any steady state. So the jetting was absolutely spot on. It's just that somebody had wound out, or the pump jet had been adjusted to put loads of fuel in. So we just, wound that in, and it was much happier. Okay, so back to the noise. What is a reasonable life for an SU? What are the best indicators that it's worn and requires rebuilding? So I used to say that if you drive a car every day, then it needs a rebuild every 5 years. And in terms of indicators, I'll let Darren answer that because he's tuned a few. You know what worn SUs look like, don't you? What do you
Yeah.
see when you tune a worn SU?
They're usually crusty.
So
The biggest problem they'll have trouble stabilizing at idle, like they just won't idle right, and a lot of it's due to worn throttle shaft bushings. So if you grab your throttle shaft and you can wiggle it, then it's time to rebuild it because that's too much play. That's probably the biggest indicator. If you take the needle out and it's all pitted and corroded, then that's another problem as well. Again, fuel related. But yeah, I say the throttle shafts are probably the biggest indicator of use and wear. But anytime if you've got like a jet problem or a flow problem, you're pretty much taking it off to rebuild it anyway. So that's also a good place to go and check all the parts.
So one of the biggest indicators, if you don't inspect the car, but you just put the sniffer up the back and see what the fueling is with an SU, it will vary. So it will either change while you're watching it, or you rev it and it won't come back to the same point every time. So the carburetor won't control the fueling. Okay, so that's the biggest indicator. Is it's done when you're monitoring what's coming out the tailpipe. If the engine may run absolutely fine, but if the mixture ratio is varying all over the place, then that's the indicator that it needs a rebuild. Timbo, any plans to be at the Classic Motor Show AC? Nope. I only go to motor shows I get invited to. Simple as that. Amiz Lad, hi Darren and Adrian.
Welcome back.
Okay. Keith of the Shire, I said it last time, your knowledge is becoming very rare and you should have plenty of demand going forward. Well, thank you for that. And I am seeing that people who know anything about tuning, especially SUs, is quite thin on the ground. And that's one of the reasons why I offer training for people. And Darren is an example because he's taken up all the training I offer and he's now doing great guns, tuning cars himself in the United States and also modifying distributors. So, I'm trying to pass on the knowledge to those that are interested and need it.
And there's also the possibility of getting a remote tune from either one of us.
Yes. So Darren did his first remote tune very recently, and I'm actually still doing one right now for a chap in Canada somewhere. Okay. So, Keith of the Shire, is there any benefit on using a 4-gas analyzer instead of a wideband? For tuning, yes, but it's impractical because it's quite slow. Okay, because you can understand what the hydrocarbons are doing, so that gives you an idea of the quality of the burn and how well the engine is sealed up. So that is useful. I used to use a 4-gas Sun MGA 1200 for many years when I was at ML Motorsport for doing the tuning, and the hydrocarbons was very, very useful. But you can actually get a hydrocarbon meter for about 300 quid in the UK, handheld one, very much like the Snap-on combustion analyzer, and they use it for measuring the combustion in boilers. So heat and service engineers have it. That'll do the hydrocarbons. The only problem with it will get blocked up, so you'll have to clean and service it, and it costs money. That's the problem where people normally fall down with these machines. Amiz Lad, I recently had my mini tune at Mini Medics, and the dashpot required ATF fluid. I recently topped up my dashpot with ATF. Why did you top it up? That wasn't that long ago. Don't remove the dashpot damper to check the level. All right, if you take the piston out, take the damper rod out, it will remove the oil, right? And that's how if you keep doing that every week, there won't be any oil within a couple of weeks. All right, so don't check it. You don't normally have to check oil every 12 months. should last that long. There are different grades of ATF. My suspicion is the weather's changed recently, and you just need that might be a little bit thin for the current temperature. So perhaps if you change that to 530 oil, you might find it's better for you.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I never understood until I did training with AC is how sensitive the SU is to weather, particularly if you're running a fixed jet HS2 or 4. They do change quite dramatically. And where I live, we can have anywhere from a freezing cold day up to mid 80s, mid 90s Fahrenheit, and so we have a very wide range of weather swings. So they can it certainly causes havoc.
One of the other problems you have is when we're setting them up on a day, we're actually setting them up very precisely, yeah, and the temperature changes will affect that. So if I've tuned your car on a warm day and it's now a cold day, you're probably finding that you just need a little bit more fuel enrichment during acceleration. So I'd say change that ATF to 530, and you might find 530 works better for you in the winter, yeah, and ATF works better for you in the summer. Back to Dion. Darren, did you make your own distributor testing rig? Maybe do a show and tell. Over to you.
Yes, I did, because AC and I discussed the ways of measuring ignition timing on a distributor that's outside of a car, and we realized right away that you can't measure it properly and adjust it using a standard distributor machine. So I had to make my own distributor machine and strobe circuitry to make it all work properly. I could probably show it, but explaining the circuit inside is proprietary.
Yeah. So my suggestion is maybe show and tell at a future. Yeah. So you can show the machine on a future episode of this live. Yeah. Not necessarily tonight, because I know you've got to move around and stuff, but perhaps we could do that in the future. But yeah, so Darren's just protecting stuff that he's made, and rightly so. So but it won't stop you seeing the machine and perhaps a demonstration maybe. But I know if you
some of the
I
other
know
videos I have shown this distributor itself inside the chuck, so you can see some of that. But I'll probably make a proper episode out of it at some point in the future. The problem is I've been a bit too busy.
Yes, well, being too busy, I mean, that's not a bad illness, is it? Having things to do. So Darren basically built a machine based on something I suggested. It turns out to be very, very good. I've even gone down the road of thinking about how we can make these and produce them. But they're whichever way you do it, they're quite expensive. So I've shelved that idea. But in terms of Darren, he can certainly help you out if you want a machine with the electrical circuitry, but you'll just have to buy it off him, which is fair enough. I've had to buy one off him, so he hasn't given it to me. He's sold me one. So just because I trained him doesn't mean to say I'll get any favors. So all I'm saying is we helped each other there, so that works out really well. Anyway, the rig you built works really well, and it's very simple, to be fair.
Yeah, it could be done on the car, but it's just easier to have it outside the car.
Okay, so ERC1808, please can you explain how hydrocarbons affect performance? Okay, hydrocarbons, basically, the higher the hydrocarbons, the more unburnt fuel, the poorer the combustion is. Okay, so effectively, if you have a standard factory engine with a standard cam and you've got high hydrocarbons, it means you're not combusting it properly. So you've got a seal problem in the engine, or you've got insufficient ignition to actually burn that fuel properly, or you've got as I said, sealing issue. You've got a compression problem. So you could even have a timing problem as well. Obviously, if you've got high hydrocarbons, also indicate are noticeable when you've got too much ignition advance idle, for example, like if you're not using ported vacuum. You'll also notice high hydrocarbons when you've got an engine with quite a hot camshaft. So the more overlap you have on a cam, the more unburnt hydrocarbons will be going out the exhaust at low speeds. Okay, so there's quite a lot of factors there, but I like to understand the hydrocarbons that are going out the back if I can, because that helps me understand how the engine's burning and how good it is. Keith of the Shire, what performance advantage, power increase would you expect from 1.3 ratio rockers? Normally, I find 1.3 ratio rockers, depending on the cam, normally give the best average torque across the driving range. So they won't upset the idle, but you will get a nice bulge at low to mid RPM ranges, and you'll also get a small boost in top end power.
I've been meaning to try and fit one of your old 0.3s onto that car just to see what they do. Haven't had time.
Yeah, fair enough. Oh, Colin's asked you a question now. Have you managed to upgrade to a Bluetooth 123 yet?
No, I don't have the money for it yet. And I'm too busy working on this car.
Yeah, fair enough. I think he'll get round to it, Colin, because I remember I talked to Darren about your distributor and he liked it a lot.
A bit too much. Someone did recommend there's a company in California that has a module that you can install and it is programmable as well. I did look at that. It was less expensive, but again, it's just a matter of what coil power does it have and who has the highest one. Yeah. And I think the 123 may have the 0.8, or is it a 1.5? I can't remember now.
I think
but I really want the power.
The 123 tune has a 1, and they use their own one, which is a 1 ohm coil. So okay. That's about, but that's a pretty high power unit. So
yeah, the fact that it was Bluetooth programmable, that was what was really cool about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to have that, and I'd love to have an MSD, either one, just to play around with.
MSD for lightning bolts. That's what we want. we could almost ignite water with one of those, I think.
Yeah. Well, and again, the more power you can punch into the spark plugs, the leaner the burn can be. So the higher fuel economy.
ERC 1808 is telling you to plug your own channel. So over to you.
It's Darren's Restorations. I can't type it into the chat. Someone else will have to type it into the chat, but that's my channel. It's got a bunch of mini content.
What we'll do is once we finish this live feed, Darren can then comment on the video after we finished, so he can put up his details in there, so you can go and like, subscribe, and all the rest of it to Darren's channel. Darren is going to be doing a series which he's just started. What's it, Classic Mini Survival or whatever you're calling it now?
Yeah, the Classic Mini Survival Guide. I've got the second or third episode up Friday, and the whole point of the series is to talk about things that people won't know if they're getting into this hobby. You know, for people who've owned these cars for 20 years, it's just second nature to do certain things. But I'm finding that people don't even understand how to use a choke or even set it up properly because they've never owned a car with a choke before. And they may have inherited one of these cars from a family member, or they just want to buy one. They think they're really cool, but they don't have the basic skills to keep them going. Yeah. So I had to start somewhere. So I started that guide, and I've got a lot of videos to post up.
It's funny you should say that, but I had a phone call earlier from a guy that I tuned earlier in the year, and he's just said, and he sent me a video. It's all flat. It's not revving properly. And I said to him, I said, "Has that warmed up?" And he said, "No, it's just started." And I said, "Well, it won't rev until it's warmed up." You know, he showed me a video of him putting his foot down and it just falling flat on its face and then picking up. And I said, "You've got to wait for it to warm up, you know." and he was an example of a younger chap who's never been brought up with carburetors, so he doesn't know that it's not going to run until it warms up. And I said, all you need to do is add a little choke and enrichen that fuel mixture up, and it'll be fine. I said, no engine's going to run when it's cold because there's not enough heat in the manifold to vaporize the fuel, so it's just not going to work.
Yeah, it's really important to get that heat in there. And that's what I was saying earlier. That red car on that road trip, in the morning, it was running Lambda 1, but by midday, it was 0.85, just because it went from, 50 degrees ambient temperature to 95.
Yeah.
So that huge temperature swing caused that much of a difference in fueling characteristic.
Yeah.
And then a perfect example of that is the injection cars. This car to my left has water heated intake manifold. It has heated air piping for the intake, and it also has a electrically heated manifold. So the factory went through a lot of effort to heat the manifold up to temperature quickly for cold start reasons and just for cold running conditions. And one of the things that I think that people don't understand is that a water heated manifold gets the manifold up to a temperature, but it keeps it at a constant temperature. It also fights against the heat of the exhaust right below it. So it does two different things.
Yeah.
It does really well.
It also keeps the manifold at the right temperature when you're running wide open and you've got a lot of air flowing through it, cooling it down. So, airflow makes a big difference, especially wet air when you've got vaporization going on, and that cools things down as well. So that actually does make a difference, especially in cold weather. So what have we got? Okay, what road cars do you drive, and what is your dream car? Well, mine's easy. I just drive a Ford Focus EcoBoost 1.5, which is really boring. So a dream car, probably anything with a great big American V8 in it. Tuned to perfection, of course, probably with 2 4-barrels on it, something ridiculous.
Yeah, I've got a Volkswagen camper van that I drive daily, mostly because it works really well as a van. So I'm always hauling stuff. And then I've got that many there in the back, and I've got another injection car hiding around the corner. That's good enough for me. I can't dream that high.
Yeah, I don't fancy a Ferrari or any of that sort of thing. So, great big engine. I like a big lazy engine. Okay, so back to the noughties. Water heated manifolds, any good? Yes, we've just been talking about it. Colin Duff. I see, made the car go like a dog running after its balls were stung by a bee. Another variation on the wasp. Thanks for that, Colin. That's made us all laugh. Back to the noughties. What's the best inlet for a HI 44? I think it always used to be the mini spares one, but I'm not so sure nowadays. I have no problem with the mini spares ones. They all run. I haven't got any test data or any flow data and things like that.
What's more important is that the thickness of the flanges match the exhaust manifold. So when you go to fit one, you got to make sure those flanges are equal thickness. Otherwise, you'll have air leaks somewhere. That's the biggest problem I have. I've never had a problem with the shape. It's always been how they install.
Darren Robert Shaw. When I picked her Mini up, I couldn't get it started. The missus said, "You need to pull the choke out." I'm pulling it out. I said, "That's the heater," she's replied, pulling the wrong knob on the dashboard.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. I'm not going to just do the specific. It's going to be specifics, and then it's going to be all the other stuff. Like this car is going to get a video about the repair work. That car has got a bunch of electrical work. So it's just I'm not going to get stuck on one specific series. It's going to be mixed up as I have time to shoot them.
Yeah, so there's no particular order, but that's the point. Is you have to get the footage whenever you got the opportunity. So I think I'll take it. Are you setting up a an area where you're keeping all that on your channel, so a playlist, so people can go in there and have a rummage around. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Everything's got a playlist. So all the tuning videos are of a tuning playlist. The survival guy's got a playlist. I have a bit on just parts that I've repaired, like the alternator repair series, the starter repair, stuff like that. So yeah, they're all separated out by what they are about.
Andy Murdoch, I run Castrol Valve Master additive and super unleaded as I don't have hardened valve seats. Any detriment to using this? Um, so I've seen all sorts of cars running all sorts of additives, and I've seen good and I've seen bad. So to me, it's indifferent. The best I've seen is to use hardened inserts with a fuel additive. Yeah, then you get the best protection. But nobody does that because that's, they don't seem as that as sensible. But if you actually run hardened inserts with a valve protector, it protects your valves as well, not just the seats. So when you run unleaded seats and you do a lot of motorway miles, for example, and you've got hardened inserts in the head, the actual valve itself will still pit. Yeah, and the classic example of that is a standard factory unleaded head. So if you ever take them out, especially the 1275, like the injection ones, you'll find that the exhaust valve seats pit terribly on the valves themselves, not the seats in the head. They are protected by an insert, but the valves still get damaged by micro welding. So having a fuel additive for high speed running for the removal of the lead is a good thing. Bradley Clark, did the Mini in Canada have a plug-in heater that was in the core plug of the block?
Some of the Canadian cars had a heater that went around the dashboard that was thermostatically controlled. They also had a spacer block that went between the carb and the manifold that was electrically heated as well. I don't know about a core plug or like an oil cooler style heater. I stuck one of those in my van because I do deal with sub-zero temperatures during the winter, and I can plug it in. But I don't know if they were fitted them from factory. But I do know they had the carburetor heater and they had the manifold heater as well.
Andy says, where's the best location to fit a wideband sensor? So follow the instructions in the that you get with your gauge, okay? But I will add that if you put it right at the bottom of the Y piece, right up to the Y piece, you can get interference. So just moving it down the pipe a little bit by 12, maybe even as much as 18 inches, and you'll get a much more constant flow. So yeah, that might be a bit further down, perhaps where it coincides where the gear lever is. But I wouldn't go any further back than that because you need the heat to keep it clean.
Yeah, it's tricky because there's a minimum distance they want from the head. And then they also want it to be a certain number of degrees above horizontal. So it can be difficult to find a spot to satisfy both those requirements.
Yeah.
They also will get dirty. So if you read through the book, you'll see that you have to have it removed every so often to clean it. They'll talk about every 3 months or 6 months or once a year, depending on the mileage. I've got to take it out of that car.
Yeah, or especially if it's been running rich.
Yeah, running rich or any oil burning will start contaminating it.
That's the other one. Yeah, thanks for that one, Darren. You're absolutely right. Oil burning will definitely not do the gauge, not do the lambda sensor any good. Key for the Shire, Maniflow inlet manifold seems to move the carb a bit closer to the bulkhead. I wouldn't know because I don't fit the inlet manifolds, but if that is the case, then other people can listen. But I don't know if Ross is still online from Thomas Classic and Modern. But if he is, then maybe he can shed some light on the manifolds.
As long as they're heated, that's all I care about. I mean, you can change the spacers.
Okay. Do the wideband sensor collars have to be welded into the exhaust? Is there another method of attachment? Weld it.
I've only ever welded them.
Yeah, weld it. I mean, funny you should say that, but in my sensor that I use when I'm doing my tuning, I've brazed it in. But I mean, you can braze it into the exhaust. So that would work, but it has to be sealed completely.
Yeah, because it's designed to read percentage of oxygen. So small air leaks nearby will throw it way off.
I think we're coming to the end here. We've got a lot of people online still tonight. This is good.
Yeah.
53 currently. Can we have some more likes?
So AC, I know your tuning kit. It's a conical shaped piece that slides into the exhaust tip, right?
Yeah.
That's how you get your air sealing.
Yes.
Yeah, I have various silicone adapters, size adapters to connect the pipe straight up with hose clamps. Mine takes more time to deal with. It's a bit fussy.
Yeah, so the reason why mine is like my design is because I spend a lot of time in fields tuning many cars, and I need it quick to move from car to car. So I agree that your system, I would class, is better for doing the tuning because it's it's much more sealed, but it is slower to use. Irk 1808, I was told by a very good bespoke exhaust manufacturer near me that they have all manner of lambda sensor angles from car manufacturers coming in for new bespoke exhausts to be made.
I've never needed a special adapter. I just punch the hole and weld it up.
Yeah.
It's the other thing they care about is how much the exhaust sensor sticks into the exhaust itself. They don't want it sitting in too far because it could get too hot. So they just want to make sure that it doesn't get overheated. So they do sell like extensions to move the tip away from the center of the exhaust. But I don't think that's really a problem with our engines. I don't think we have that much heat. We're not talking V8 power here.
Daniel Reed, how do you set up the static timing on electronic ignition with points you can see where they're about to open? Okay, so if you're talking about a power spark distributor, you can turn the engine round and move the dizzy until the reluctor lines up with a magnetic sensor, and then you can then line up the rotor arm with the appropriate plug lead, and then turn the engine round until the timing marks at the right place. And when it all aligns, job done. If you're talking a 65D, then that's a little bit different. So the way I do it is I turn the engine round to 20 degrees before TDC on the crankshaft. Then I put the dizzy in and turn it so that its rotor arm is pointed at the appropriate plug lead. Fire the engine and then strobe it.
Realistically, we're going to do the timing at higher RPM anyway. So whatever it ends up at static at idle is just what it is.
I think, Darren, you flicked off a minute ago and your sound is quite quiet. You might want to drop off and come back in.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll carry on with a few of these while Darren sorts himself out. Paul Muff, with your sensor, fashioned into a pipe that fits into the tailpipe, do you have to compensate because it's not attached close to the engine as regards to readings? It is a little bit different, but it's not as different as you might think. Typically, when I've measured it, it's about 0.03 out, and it reads leaner by 0.03.
Yeah, it's just because it has more time to finish the combustion process by the time it reaches the tailpipe. The maker of our kit also sells a slide-in kind of clamp style adapter for doing like dyno runs, and it's not air sealed. It just gets jammed in the pipe a little bit further. But it needs airflow. It needs to be at speed. It won't do good for an idle test.
Okay, so just to answer the bottom ones there. Yeah, the echo's now stopped, I think, so it should all be good. Just Darren's rejoined the conversation there. Yeah, again, Bradley's asking, someone else is asking for your YouTube channel. So if you just say it again.
Yeah, it's Darren's Restorations.
And what Darren will do is he'll put a link on the bottom of this video once we finish this live stream, and you'll be able to use that link to go straight to it. Dion says, thanks for the live show. Good info as usual. Looking forward to the next one. Well, thank you, Dion, and hopefully it's been useful to the people watching. We will draw it a close, I think, at 10 o'clock. There's still plenty of people on, but the questions seem to be petering out now. So when they stop altogether and you have to listen to us talking about drivel, then we'll then we'll bring it to a close.
Or I start showing spark plugs again.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, no, but those were very good actually to show that, so people can see the difference between an injection car and a carburetor car, and in fact there was hardly any difference, and that's the point.
Yeah. Andy posted the channel link. Thanks, Andy.
Oh, thanks, Andy. That's excellent. So Darren's channel is a new channel, so he hasn't got very many subscribers at the moment. So please go over there and subscribe. And Darren has his own style, and he will be developing that as he goes along. But Darren's channel is going to be full of more variants than probably mine. But I will just carry on doing the odd video as I get a chance to do that. But I will be focusing on the tuning because that's what a lot of people want. Although I don't get a lot of repeat reviews on my tuning videos, so they're not the ones that the engine room of funding the channel, so to speak. So I will be doing the odd different video, different subject as time goes on.
And also just comment if you want to see something specifically, because we read the comments.
Yeah, we do
I'm
read
always
the comments.
looking for ideas.
Daniel Reed, it's great to see you two take time out to help us all with our technical questions. Well, we do our best, and we do realise that there are a lot of people that do have issues with their vehicles, and they can't necessarily get information that's correct or useful to them. So we do our best. Andy Murdoch there. Thanks, guys. Just stumbled on the live stream. BMW bike head engines seem very good but expensive. What are your thoughts? I haven't built one, so it would be wrong of me to comment on it. Although I look at the power curves and that developed by other people, and yeah, they go quite well. But for me, why would you want to put all that power through a mini gearbox? It's not going to last long. So getting the power is not the problem. It's putting it down to the road is always the issue.
And also, it's like if we spend all that time and energy doing that one car, then all those other people we could help would just be driving around struggling with their cars. Like I'd rather help 5 or 6 other people versus one specific project. If if time and energy were not a problem, I'd have a BMW head engine, but I've never built one either. I'm just too busy. I'm too busy fixing normal stuff like people's brakes and cylinder head problems. Try to keep them on the road. The more we drive them, the more the parts suppliers will keep making parts for us.
Yeah. And I'm too busy machining flywheels.
Yeah, and that's a good point. It's like, you know, we do a lot of tuning, but you're at the same time you're also making the clutch assemblies perfect and flywheels perfect because other people can't.
Yeah.
That knowledge has just disappeared. I had to get a whole fake crankshaft ground just to be able to fit a clutch and flywheel assembly into a electronic balancing machine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not easy if you haven't got the tools and the time and all the rest of it. And you know, being in a different country, you know, can really, you know, bugger things up. Uh, Darren there says, "Is it correct that a mini head can be ported for?" Well, you know, what engine, what head?
I mean, a lot of power gains happen when you get the fueling right and the timing right. Just
Yes, the biggest power gain on an engine, a standard engine, is actually tuning it, dialing it in properly to make it work properly. And then if you fit modified parts after that to improve the performance, again, it needs to be tuned again once that's fitted. You'll be surprised how many people fit parts and modify cylinder heads and then don't bother tuning the engine. And then they wonder why they get overtaken by a completely standard engine that's running on form. So to try and put some meat on the bones of what Darren's saying, is it true you can modify the cylinder head? Well, if you've got completely standard crappy plastic box air filters and all the rest of it, it's not going to make anywhere near the difference. Whereas if you fitted a stage one kit to that engine and then decided to modify the head, then it will make quite a difference. In my experience, it's always worth porting the cylinder head on a Mini, on a classic A series, because the cylinder head is terrible in standard form, especially well, in fact, especially all of them. You know, even a standard 1275 head, which looks a lot bigger, will flow massively better with a good reshaping.
yeah, the restriction is always the valves.
Yeah. So in fact, if you don't port a cylinder head at all, so you just leave an A series, like say, take a 1275 12G 940 head, and you do not touch the ports at all, and you just do like a decent sort of 4-angle seat job on the inlet and reshape the inlet and exhaust seats, back cut the valves, etc., and then just reshape the chambers. That will give you half the airflow of a fully modified head. Okay, so you don't have to do any porting, and of course, if you do that, you get high gas speeds and a lot of tumbling going on. So you get good economy. So and it's about half the cost of doing a head. So for half the cost, you get half the airflow, but you actually get high speed airflow. So it makes a great road engine combination.
Yeah, that tumbling is really important.
Darren's just clarified. That's what I meant. I was told the rockers wouldn't necessarily need to be changed to get gains. No, they don't need to be changed to get gains. But changing the rockers doesn't obviously make a difference, and it does make a big difference. And the rockers are like a magnifier. So if you've got an engine that produces say 83 horsepower, then going from a 1.2 rocker to a 1.5 rocker might see you hit 97, for example. But the difference is you'll shorten the life of the camshaft. So you know, running a 1.3 rocker may see you at sort of 88 horsepower with the same engine, but none of the problems with the wear. Okay, so that's where rocker ratios are changed because it makes a big difference. But you have to remember that the difference is generally with the higher the ratio, the more up the rev range the power gets pushed.
So if you had to choose between a head and a flywheel, what would you do?
If I had to choose,
Yeah, if someone was on a budget and they asked that question.
flywheel. No question. Much cheaper. So if they were doing the work themselves, so one of the things we used to do as ML Motorsport is tell people, look, you don't have to have a modified engine. If you want a quick mini, all you have to do is put a light and flywheel on it, recurve the dizzy, yeah, fit a big valve cylinder head. So I'm talking about a 1275 base engine, big valve cylinder head, and all completely standard. Get the compression ratio right and fit a mild cam. So what I mean by mild, I mean like a something like an MG Metro cam or factory cam, yeah, or SW5, something like that. But you don't need it modified because you'll get a lot of power via torque, yeah. And if you've got a curved dizzy and the right needle in the carburetor and a stage 1 kit fitted on it, it will go very, very well. And that's enough for a lot of people. But if you want more power, then obviously the next thing would be a cylinder head and probably some rockers. And then once you get up to 85, 90 horsepower, that's kind of your limit for a sensible road engine. After that, it gets a bit lumpy and rattly, and the lifespan comes down a bit. Key for the shot, Verto, better / worse than older flywheel. No comparison, much better.
Yeah, I've still got the 2-piece with that giant metal lump right on the outside. And that thing is heavy.
Yeah. People seem to forget that the benefit of the Verto is you halve the thrust washer load on the crankshaft. So it's just not even in the same ballpark. Way better. I've also built them up to 425 foot-pounds of holding torque. You can't get anywhere near that with a standard Pre-verto type. So the Verto is way better. How balanced are the factory crankshafts? Reasonable, but they're not brilliant. The later MPI ones are a lot better because BMW obviously did something with the tolerances and they changed the way they were doing them. But they're not bad, but they're not brilliant. So they are worth balancing. But having said that, I haven't balanced the crank for over 20 years. I just balance the flywheel. Is there much benefit to change from a mechanical fuel pump to the power losses from the mechanic? No, forget it. Pointless waste of time. The only time you would go from a mechanical to an electronic is if you need the fuel flow because you've got a Weber and you're racing.
We're trying to get rid of an oil leak.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've been using those Hardy brand pumps. They seem to work out well.
Okay. I think we need to call it to a close.
Okay.
Mainly because my legs are going numb. 89 recommendations for engine rebuilders. Asking for a friend. Ross Thomas Classic and Modern. Andy Davis, ML Motorsport over in Kent, and then you've got Keith Carver up north. They are 3 straight off the top of my head. Okay, so I'm going to call it. We'll call it a night there. But we'll look forward to seeing you again on the next one, whenever that is. But just look out for it. Thanks very much for coming on board, and I'll thank Darren for coming along as well, because I'm sure it's better with Darren than just me, because there's only so much talking I can do before I go silent. So Darren, I think, adds a little bit of sparkle to this, and just gives a different view on things, not just mine. And it's also nice to see other people asking Darren for his opinion on stuff. And obviously, Darren can give his view on what he sees in the United States, which is excellent. So
yeah, I appreciate coming on.
Yeah, that's all. I mean, it's great, and people love it. So thank you very much. Appreciate all the likes, and I'll look forward to seeing you guys soon. Thanks very much, Darren. Catch up with you soon.
Thanks, Casey.
Bye bye.
See everyone later.